With the NFL only a week away and those last weekend drafts coming up, you need to know all the changes that are going to affect your rankings going into those vital drafts. I'll take you through it all on the Fantasy First Down. I'm Ben Wasley. Welcome to the Fantasy First Down. Today we're keeping it simple. No graphics, no videos. I'm just going to talk you through all the changes you need to know about because, frankly, this is a busy time of year for me as well. If you've got any questions, though, make sure you hit me up in the comments or on Instagram at the Fantasy First Down or on Twitter at Fantasy First Down with no O. If you need some last minute rankings for your leagues, I will do it for just $10 US. If you hit me up at benwasley23 at gmail.com, I'll personalize them especially for your league settings. And finally, you can check out my rankings for free for your leagues at ffdfantasyfootball.com. But let's talk about all those last minute changes that are going to have a massive impact on your drafts coming up. I'm going to start things off with the quarterbacks, and Spencer Rattler has been named the Saints' Week 1 starter. He's barely draftable in the deepest of Superflex leagues, but he does give New Orleans receivers a slight boost, given he's a slightly more aggressive passer than Tyler Shock. Meanwhile, we do know that Matthew Stafford is practicing in full and will also be the starter come Week 1. So you can ease back those Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams concerns. Nacua, in particular, is now a bit of a bargain, as he often falls in the second round of drafts. And meanwhile, in Seattle, Jalen Milroe will likely get some snaps under center in a sort of Taysom Hill kind of role. This hurts Sam Darnold and Kenneth Walker a little bit, but it's unlikely to have a major effect if it's only a snap or two each game. Now for the running backs, and Joe Mixon will start the season on IR, making Nick Chubb the favorite for the early down role in Houston. Dameon Pierce isn't clearly out of the picture, but I'd be surprised if he's doing anything but giving Chubb brief spells. It does remain to be seen how often receiving back Dare Ogunbowale gets involved, though. If he's only in on third and long situations, Chubb could have some significant value if Mixon's injury becomes a long-term concern. Chubb is currently my running back 29 at the moment, and a real bargain in some drafts because you're going to get at least 4 weeks of good value. And if you're doing a zero RB strategy, he's someone you can pick up at an absolute bargain. Now, Brian Robinson's arrival in San Francisco kills Christian McCaffrey's value for me. He was my running back 3, and he's not anymore. This trade suggests Robinson will spell CMC more often than we have seen in the past and moves him down, CMC that is, to being my running back 5 in PPR and my running back 6 in half PPR. Meanwhile, Robinson is an upside bench stash, but given he's not great on third downs, I still think it would be a committee if CMC goes down. Still a high-value committee for the starter. RJ Harvey, meanwhile, will be the early down runner in Denver, but it remains likely that J.K. Dobbins will take the majority of the passing downs as he has this preseason. This is strange, given their perceived skill sets entering the preseason. We usually think of Dobbins as being an early down guy, and Harvey was fine out of the backfield in college, but it could just be the case of the Broncos keeping their cards close to their chest. However, if this is indeed how they are used during the season, Dobbins loses value as he's not a clear handcuff. Jaleel McLaughlin has been the early down backup, and Harvey takes a big drop in PPR leagues. He'll likely disappoint as a top 20 redraft pick, and that's where he's being drafted at the moment, meaning I don't have a lot of shares, and I'm kind of happy about that. As predicted last week, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, the 7th-round rookie, will be a lead early down back in Washington, but it'll be Austin Eckler that will take the receiving work. Unfortunately, though, it appears Chris Rodriguez may get the goal line work, according to their head coach, and that's going to remove much of JCM's upside. The rookie is a top 30 pick for me, and at best, someone you should get in the middle rounds if you are employing one of those zero RB strategies. But as I said earlier, I'd be more inclined to lean someone like a Nick Chubb, or if you're desperate early, someone like Jalen Warren. Speaking of Jalen Warren, and Caleb Johnson continues running behind Warren while Kenneth Gainwell is embedded as the Steelers' third down back. That's bad news for Johnson owners who will need to wait for the rookie to beat out Warren for early down carries rather than having him be fantasy relevant from week 1. For me, neither is a top 30 running back in any format in this weekend's drafts. After all, even once Johnson takes the lead role, if he takes it at any point, how much is that even going to be worth? How much are we thinking the committee back in Pittsburgh is someone you want on your team? Another rookie well down the depth chart is Cam Scatterboo. Tyrone Tracy is the clear lead back, while Devin Singletary is still going to mix in as he did during the preseason. Scatterboo may get some early goal line touches, but it will take time before he surpasses the two veterans ahead of him. The one good piece of news is that the rookie was being used on all three downs during the preseason. But even if Scatterboo somehow wins the lead role in New York, how much do you really want the Giants running back? At this stage, he's barely a top 50 back for me, and I'm not really that excited about Tracy either. Rounding out a trifecta of rookie disappointment, and it's Jaden Blue, who played behind even Juice Vaughn. And Vaughn didn't even make the roster in his preseason debut. No, it's not that unusual for a rookie to be down the depth chart and have to work his way up, but he does appear clearly behind Devontae Williams and at least initially, Miles Sanders. He's an okay late stash, but I'll say it again. How much do you really want the Cowboys running back? I mean, after all, Williams at the moment is barely being drafted as a top 40 back. If Blue somehow wins the lead role, well, there's still more upside elsewhere. Brashard Smith is one of my favorite under-the-radar rookies this preseason, though more of a dynasty guy than redraft. He has risen to third on the depth chart and has been getting some receiving work with the starters. He's a great dynasty stash, but not worth much in redraft with Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, likely in some sort of committee in KC early in the season, where Pacheco gets more of the snaps, but Hunt still kind of gets involved. I do think as time goes on, Smith could turn into that Jerick McKinnon role, and I do like him, especially in a PPR dynasty situation or in a really deep league. He does have the talent to eventually take over every down in a couple of years' time if things go right. Speaking of day three guys, and Kyle Mananga is another rookie who could have a surprise week one role. The seventh rounder could reportedly be involved behind DeAndre Swift as a change of pace or maybe a receiving option. He's not draftable outside dynasty leagues, but with Roshan Johnson still an injury concern, Manangai could be involved straight away. Meanwhile, the Browns' backfield is a total mess, with Quinshon Judkins yet to sign, but the likely starter when he arrives, if he arrives. In the meantime, Jerome Ford and day three rookie Dylan Sampson are splitting work on all downs. It's possible clearer roles become established as the season progresses, but for now, neither of them has much upside for me. Sampson is the more likely of the two to hold true upside this season, but I'm simply avoiding all Cleveland runners, especially until we know what's happening with Judkins. Meanwhile, Kendre Miller is the clear Saints running back too, and is a great super late pickup in case Alvin Kamara goes down. I know a lot of people are talking about Devin Neal, but you can get Miller in the last round of most drafts, and if Kamara goes down, it will be Miller that becomes the fantasy starter and likely at least a running back too, if not better. Jalen Wright's injury, meanwhile, has made rookie Ollie Gordon the new Dolphins backup, but I do expect when Wright returns, he'll take the backup role back. That makes Gordon a kind of pointless late round pickup to me, even though I've seen him going quite early in some drafts. Now let's talk wide receivers. And Amari Cooper's signing by the Raiders is a bit of a surprise choice given their current depth at the position. I know they wanted to bring him back home, but I feel like it's a slightly strange decision. While it could be related to Jacoby Myers' current contract battles, I think it's more likely an indictment on their need for a veteran's presence and maybe their lack of confidence in their second round rookie Jack Beck and maybe Trey Tucker. Cooper will be overdrafted in fantasy, and I'm avoiding all Raiders receivers except maybe Donta Thornton, who's of course the fifth rounder who's become the clear outside starter. He's more of a dynasty pickup, but he could be okay for this year, especially depending on what happens with Myers. Another rookie who was taken in the fifth round is Torrey Horton. He'll be the wide receiver 3 in Seattle after Marquez Valdez-Scantling was surprisingly released after being given quite a big contract. This isn't a particularly exciting role behind Jackson Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp, but maybe they just decided they can only have one hyphen in the team. Especially given the number of 2 tight end sets the Seahawks run, and I can't imagine Horton doing much for fantasy, but there is a little dynasty upside there. Meanwhile, Luther Burden isn't worth drafting in your weekend redraft drafts. Gosh, that's a lot of drafts in one sentence. Olamide Zaccheaus is the clear starting slot receiver, with Burden not even a clear fourth on the depth chart at the moment. Devin Duvernay is kind of in that same range as well. Zaccheaus has been an underrated weapon at times, especially more recently at Washington when he had a couple of big weeks, and is an okay pickup in super deep leagues. Meanwhile, Burden is a stash if you already have him, but I would avoid him if your league is yet to draft, as he is going just plain too early. The 49ers receiver room, meanwhile, has been totally decimated with the starting receivers potentially being Ricky Pearsall, Sky Moore, and I mean, there is literally no one else on the roster that is both healthy and available. So I guess it's probably going to be a practice squad promotion or they sign someone in. While the situation is likely temporary, I mean, we know that the Marcus Robinson suspension is only for 3 games. Brandon Ayuk will be back at some stage. Juwan Jennings could easily play week 1, although there has been talk that he might go on IR. It does mean that Pearsall, George Kittle, and maybe Christian McCaffrey could be real bargains given this situation, while Brock Purdy is once again being overdrafted, given he does need a lot of weapons around him to succeed, and I'm just not sure he's going to have them. Chris Olave, meanwhile, has been getting surprise slot stats in New Orleans. I already talked about Rattler helping him out a little bit, and this is also going to be a benefit to Olave. These tend to have a little more value and could make Olave a great bargain in final weekend drafts. Meanwhile, Brandon Cooks appears to be slightly ahead of Devon Vele, but I'm expecting a committee of some sort for the wide receiver 3s. When Vele's on, that means Olave is obviously not in the slot, so I'm hoping it's more Cooks, but I do think that both of those wide receiver 3 options aren't draftable. Olave is a top 30 option for me, and Rashid Shaheed, more of a wide receiver 60 sort of guy. I'm not going to get him in a lot of drafts. I think the upside is low. He kind of booms last year, but I think it was a little bit fluky. Meanwhile, Alec Imanor is yet to beat out Van Jefferson for the wide receiver 3 role in Tennessee. Given this isn't a particularly appetizing situation, Imanor is a wasted pick in redraft, but he's a fine dynasty pickup, as is their slot man, Chimere DK, who could easily be the starter by next season after Tyler Lockett moves on. Lockett is well into his 30s now. Jamar Thrash, meanwhile, is the favorite for the Browns wide receiver 3 role, with Deontay Johnson being slightly surprisingly released. That is, in particular, good news for Cedric Tillman, who's back in my top 50. But don't totally discount Isaiah Bond for that slot job. He was already taking some starting snaps in his first preseason game last weekend. Neither Thrash nor Bond is draftable outside deep dynasty leagues, but Bond has more upside of the two, even if Thrash is probably the week 1 starter. Sterling Shepard, meanwhile, will be the starting slot receiver for the Buccaneers, at least until Chris Godwin returns. I know a lot of people are talking Tez Johnson, but they've clearly shown us Shepard is the guy. But Godwin's return might not be that far away. He's avoided the IR list to start the season, and for me, he's an upside top 40 receiver. We've seen what happens when you are the Bucs slot receiver. Last season, that meant being the wide receiver 2 on a per-game basis. Meanwhile, Shepard is a deep league PPR pickup if you're really struggling with injuries. We know Liam Cohen isn't in town anymore, and that could have an impact. But this is going to be a high-volume offense, and I do believe Godwin is someone you want at his current cost, especially if you have enough depth and he's more of a bench option. You can wait until he returns fully from injury. Meanwhile, tight ends and Evan Ingram continues to split snaps with Adam Troutman and looks like being one of the season's bigger busts. He's a total avoid for me, and he currently rates as my tight end 17, even though most people taking him as a top 10 tight end. He was fantastic in Jacksonville. He will not be fantastic in Denver. He is a total avoid. Speaking of avoids, and Brock Bowers remains a terrible second-round selection. Michael Mayer is back and healthy and will likely take more snaps from the rookie sensation, while Ashton Genty will also be a pest over the middle of the field. Remember, Bowers wasn't even the tight end 1 last year. That was George Kittle. Bowers is a strong avoid for me after being my favorite bargain last season. He's still a top 3 tight end, and I do think that we'd see that the preseason usage is not the same way they use them during the season. But Meyer is someone they like. He was a second-round guy. They love Bowers, of course, as well, but he is more of a receiving back who's pretty light, and I think that they want to get Mayer in there on early downs to make it easier for the rookie Genty. And finally, Mason Taylor is clearly ahead of Jeremy Ruckert on the Jets depth chart and is a great late round stash, especially in Dynasty. While he won't get used like Tyler Conklin did last year, Conklin was often a top 15 tight end. There's not a lot of pass catching competition behind Garrett Wilson in New York, so Taylor has a clear path to fantasy relevance early in the season, even though we know Justin Fields won't pass the ball that much. And that's all we have for the late breaking news before your drafts. I'll be back in the next couple of days to update my rankings and get you all prepped for those weekend drafts. Make sure you hit me up if you've got any questions. My socials are below. Also, check out the rankings over at ffdfantasyfootball.com. I'm updating every single day, and I look forward to hearing how you go in your drafts and then getting into the NFL season finally.